in my view, I think physicists have a problem now to define what they even call what is real and reality. And that's one of the problem, I think. So they say, it's less and less real. Yeah, but what do you mean? You don't even know what you are meaning when you're saying it's real or it's not real.
One needs a new notion of real, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the I think the first point. And the second point, well, I would like to come back to what I said earlier, and I think your discovery and what you found, meaning like randomness, is
my obsession,
inside
my passion.
Mathematics itself, and it's not a limit of mathematics, it's just inside, and it allows to know, not a limitation of knowledge. I understood it, and I love that point. I think it's coherent with my point that when you are what I call in low mathematics, it looks like it's far from reality. It looks like it's close to reality, but in fact, it's far. But when you are in high mathematics, it looks like it's far from reality, but in fact, it's close to reality because it's close to what we think is far, meaning quantum mechanics, because what we think is close to reality is causality, but in fact, causality is very far from reality. Causality is just a way to deal with the world that doesn't have anything to be with the real world in itself. So when you are doing what you are doing in mathematics, in fact, you are helping us to get closer to reality beyond the fantasy of causality, the fantasy of a pure deterministic world. It's what I wanted to mean, you know?
Which may be a psychological crutch to a certain extent, the idea of causality. I don't know, it helps us to think about life and about what's going on around us.
It's what said Hume. It's what said David Hume. David Hume said, that every day, you know, the Scottish philosopher.
We touched his sculpture in Edinburgh. Virginia. I photographed Virginia touching Hume's thumb or his foot or something. There's a beautiful sculpture there in Edinburgh of David Hume.
Yeah, of course. I went to the University of Edinburgh, as I told you.
That's right.
I told you. Yeah, I used to teach there.
You were there all the time.
Yeah, and I've seen him many times. But what is interesting in Hume is this idea that you think that
we should have sculptures of philosophers, not of generals.
That would be great. That would be great. That would be a great change.
Instead of a general on horseback with a sword.
That would be a great turn in civilization.
That would be a world I would like, and of course of the prophets also. People who've made.
You are very Platonician, really, because even on a political view. So that would be great if there were philosophers, or it means in the mind of Plato means mathematicians that will be a ruler instead of the regular politicians and all that. Basically, you're a Platonician.
No, I politics is something I don't understand. I don't want to understand. It makes me ill just.
Maybe it's the other way around. It's because you don't want to understand that you don't understand it.
I'm not saying that philosophers and mathematicians should be rulers. I'm just saying that these are the heroes, in my opinion. These are, how do you say, l'esprit humain. These are people whose memory honors the human spirit. And I think it's important, as we live in the midst of war and conflict and ignorance, it's important to I don't know if the subject of wokeness, for example, is relevant, but lately everyone has been deciding that all the great intellectuals, the philosophers, great writers of the past should be suppressed, you know, because they didn't follow our current fashions, and I, on the contrary, would like to honor these men and women, these people who have tried to lift humanity and lift their thoughts above the mud. How do you say mud in French? Bouillie?
La boue.
La boue, right. Above that. And, but it's difficult, you know. Mohammed tried it, Jesus tried it, Buddha tried it. It's very hard to lift humanity.
If we come back a bit about finite complexity and infinite complexity, why do we use this word? I have a hard time to try to understand that. Complex, and like if we were saying something different than it's complicated. Like we are not saying it's complicated. We are saying more than that when we are saying complex. Just before we talk about finite and infinite.
One interesting question is how complex are the thoughts that the human mind can understand? Can the world be understood? You know, an ant in your garden cannot understand quantum mechanics, right? Oh, well, quantum mechanics, are we capable of understanding how nature operates, for example, how the physical world operates? Is our intellectual level sufficiently high to permit us to? Will AIs reach a higher level of intellectual understanding?
But again, I'm sorry to do that, but it's just something that grabs me every time I hear a sentence like this one. When you say understand, I'm wondering, what does that mean, understand? And what comes to my mind, understand will be, is it to formalize, so to simplify, so I don't understand because I make it something else because it's formalization? Second, or when I think understand is that use it, being able to use it. So I understand it because I'm able to use it to do something with it. It would be like the industrial way to say understand. And so understanding is a certain relation to things, but to grab it, to take it, to even to kill it.
Not for me.
Okay, so what is it?
Listen, understanding is the T-shirt, the apocryphal T-shirt with the laws of physics on it. On one side of a T-shirt, maybe two. Now, that understanding, if you could write a set of equations that would fit here, that completely describes how the physical universe operates, that wouldn't necessarily give us any instrumental advantage, any instrumental knowledge. It might not help us to deal with the physical world. For me, understanding is completely Platonic. You know,
so
it might be that you could look at the equations, but in practice you would not be able to deduce anything from them because they were too complicated, or because the chain of reasoning would be immensely long to go from the fundamental equations.
So that means you will understand it, but you're not going to be able to use it.
Right. So for me, understanding has no practical.
So
doesn't mean I can predict anything.
So that means that
it's purely intellectual. Now the question is, the world. It may be that the world is not simple. You know, this is a joke about Feynman said. What if the world is?
It's not even intellectual. I think what you're saying. It's not even intellectual.
What if the world is complicated? What if it would be 1,000 equations? What if it would be 1,000,000 equations?
So
something that the human being could never understand.
So again, you say we'll never understand, and I want to come back to what does that mean to say understand. So if I listen carefully to what you said, and I try to listen carefully, it's not even understanding. It's not even something intellectual. It's contemplation, because it's what, and it was the image you used. You said, you see the thing, the number of equations. You can't go at the end of the equation because it's too long. Blah 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 blah. But at the end, I'm able to see it. So it's contemplation. Understanding is being able to contemplate.
You have a point. Maybe that's what it means for me. Actually, yeah. This came up very early in the development. So it's good,
because that means you leave it open. That's the reason why you were able to understand randomness and to make something with randomness, because the problem with low mathematics has, again, I like this now, these low mathematics, high mathematics or something, is that they want closure. They want to close the thing. But yourself, you say, no, we don't need to do that.
I want to open it.
Exactly. So that you say, the only thing we need to do is, how can we be able to contemplate? And how can mathematics help me to contemplate?
Well, let me give an example. I have a definition of randomness,
the most open way,
according to which most finite sequences of zeros and ones are random, but you can never be sure. So this is a definition of randomness that gives you understanding of what randomness is, but it doesn't enable you to determine if any individual thing is random or not. So this is completely contemplative,
Yeah, exactly.
completely philosophical.
I understand.
Right. But the question of finite versus infinite complexity, what if the human mind is pretty complicated, but our theories are fairly simple? What if the physical universe makes perfect sense if you can keep in your mind 5,000 equations? Then you say, oh, yes, I see it all. Because people say that now. So
that's finite complexity.
People say that now. That's finite, but it's very big.
Yeah, but that's...
Physicists now say that they understand it because you have this short list of the fundamental equations of physics, and they say they understand it. It doesn't enable them to predict what any physical system will do because physical systems may be complicated, the calculations may be too large, etc. Sure. But they say they understand that physics.
Yeah.
They get it. So 5 equations. An ant wouldn't get 5 equations, wouldn't even get 1 equation, right? And, some students might understand 1 equation, but they wouldn't get all 5. But what if the physical universe makes perfect blinding sense if you could only keep 5,000 equations in your mind? No human being will be able to.
I understand that, of course.
So that is, in effect, like infinite complexity for us, because it goes beyond what we will be able to understand.
But it's... No, I think you're wrong.
Okay.
In the last sentence, I mean, you're wrong.
Please say why.
According to what I understood, what you said before.
Okay.
Just for the last bit.
Please,
which is the last
please tell
very
me.
bit. It's just in a way because I try to follow very carefully. When you said when we said finite complexity, in what I have understood, what you said, I tend to agree. It's like big. Complexity is synonym of big because it's so big that we call it complex, but it's limited. So it's not infinite, it's finite complexity. So it might be 5,000 equations, like even 10,000, even a million of equations, but we know it's a million of equations. So it's big.
But it might as well be infinite.
And we can't apprehend it.
Right.
So it's what we call it
infinite.
Finite complexity. But when we say infinite complexity, that means it doesn't matter the number. We leave it open because it's not a finite number. Because there is it's not a number of equations. The number of equation is something that is just a way of thinking, in a way of dealing, but we don't deal, we contemplate. And if we contemplate, it doesn't stop with a specific finite number. Just because, and that's the reason why the only way to apprehend it is contemplation.
Okay, but Cantor's theory of infinities is a lot simpler, and I find it more beautiful than some much lower level of mathematics. For example, analytic number theory sometimes. It's very messy. You have to decide if some complicated infinite series converge or not, and the arguments are, you have to do estimates of this and that, and it's lots of numerical work, whereas with infinities are easier. On the subject of complexity, Leibniz, as a good rationalist, said that there is no randomness. What he said is that everything happens for a reason, but in some cases, it's an infinite chain of reasons, or almost infinite, that only God can see, but that we can't see. So he has it both ways. On the one hand, he believes that everything happens for a reason, at least in God's mind.